think the
If you'll look around from where you're sitting, you'll see microphones on either side of where you're sitting. If you'll, when we get to the Q&A session, and you've heard this before, please use the microphone. And we'll take as many questions as we can, given the time constraints on the backside. And also make sure to turn off your electronic devices. We don't want them ringing. You've done a great job about that this week, and I appreciate that. And one last time before we start, this course or this session has a continuing education credit, and you can scan your badge at the back of the panel area on your way out. If you want that credit, be sure to just hang around and get that done, and then you'll have that behind you when you leave. Okay, I think it's time we should light this cannon right now. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mike Warlick, Vice President for Defense at AFC International, and I want to start by saying how honored we are to co-support this event with the U.S. Naval Academy. It's been a great event, or U.S. Naval Institute. Shoot me. But honestly, it has been an honor to do both, and it's great to see industry back on the floor again. It's really great to see the uniforms that are here of the Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and Navy, and some others. So I think this has been an unqualified success, and we'll keep that up over the next day and a half. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and thank JADC2 for their sponsorship for this panel. JADC2 is represented today by Mike Griffith, Navy Business Development Senior Director, I've known Mike for a long time. I'm glad to be able to introduce him for this. I would now like to invite Mike to the stage to introduce our moderator.
Thank you, Colonel. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us once again for West 2022. I'm Mike Griffin. I lead business development for our Navy Marine Corps team. Very pleased to be here with all you today. Before we start, though, I would like to recognize the conference hosts, AFCEA International and U.S. Naval Institute. None of this would have happened without their dedicated efforts. It's a forum like this that allows us to gather as a community and address some of today's most exciting opportunities. This afternoon's panel discussion on the progress made in securing our networks and bringing on JADC2 is timely, highly relevant, since JADC2 is key to delivering information advantage at the speed of relevance. The success of JADC2 is predicated on a number of enabling technologies, excuse me, including cloud, AI, digital engineering, identity management, and for the purposes of today's discussion, cybersecurity. Before hearing from our distinguished panel, it's my great pleasure to welcome our moderator, Lieutenant General Robert Shea, the Permanent Director of the AFCEA International Board of Directors. General Shea most recently served as our President and CEO of AFCEA International, retiring on January 1st of 2022. He came to AFCEA in 2014 from Smartronix, where he served as EVP of Strategic Solutions. Prior to that, 36-year active duty career as a Marine Corps officer, General Shea served as Director, Command, Control, Communications, and Computer Systems for the Joint Staff, where he was Principal Advisor to Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff on all C4 systems and cyber matters. Welcome, General Shea.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Can you hear me okay? I want to give a special welcome to Bill Bender down here, the Chairman of the Board of Directors for AFCEA, and General Susan Lawrence, who is the new honcho now, and I listened to her very carefully when she worked for me on the Joint Staff, and I did everything she told me to do. So that she made me look a lot better than I really was. So anyway, welcome to both of you, and welcome to everyone out here that is going to be participating and listening to the discussion that we're going to have. And that's what I want to make this. I want to make it a discussion. So don't be afraid to step up to the microphone here and ask questions as we're going along. When you go back to where you came from, whether it's business, industry, or government, I don't want you going back and saying that you didn't get a chance to ask questions, because that's what this is about. It's a discussion. We want to have a discussion. If we don't get through I've got more questions than you could imagine, and if we don't get through them, I'm happy, because we want, and this panel wants to hear from you. We want to know what your concerns are. We want to know, your input and what your ideas are as we go forward. So again, let's keep in mind that this is a discussion. And I also want to welcome our allies over here. I see some, and I'm sure there's some. I know there's Eric's in the room somewhere. I saw him walk in. So in addition to our service brothers and sisters, we want to welcome our allies and our partners to the discussion as well. We're certainly what I would call perhaps the most challenging time of my lifetime here. As you look at if you go back and you look at the most recent national military strategy, and you look what's going on in the world right now. And a lot of the focus, rightfully so, in this conference has been on China, and I don't think this is going to change with this panel too much. But as you look around, and you've heard it from all the speakers, the concerns that are out there. They're looking to establish primacy in the Indo-Pacific region and beyond, as well as disrupting the international order that is out there. They don't see the world the same way that we do, perhaps. I had a discussion with someone not too long ago, and they said, one of the Chinese's arguments for trying to disrupt the world order is the fact that, hey, we weren't at the table when all the decisions were made, so we don't feel like we have to abide by them. I think that's very short-sighted, but I can understand where they're coming from. So the fact of the matter is they think that there's some goodness in what they're trying to do, and they don't feel compelled to live by the international norms that are out there. And among the other things they're doing, they're taking a lead in a lot of the international standards bodies that are out there. They've constantly demonstrated their want and disregard to accept international norms, such as the maritime boundaries that have been in place. And they're moving strategically. If you look at what they're doing with the Belt and Road Initiative, how they've engaged and gotten into the economics of so many different countries that are out there. And I think if you look around, if you've been watching what's going on with cyber activity over the years, if you look what's the influence that they've had through the Confucian Institutes, whether it's their engagement in industry, they're acquiring key industries, I think you come to recognize that they truly are an adversary that we need to be prepared to deal with, and the sooner we're prepared, the better. Part of the challenge of that, of course, is the defense budget is flat or going down in real terms, and so that really is a challenge, and that reflects on some of the discussion that we're going to have today. I would argue that the DoD continues to operate on networks that weren't designed to do the things that we're asking them to do in this point in time. Something's got to change there for a variety of reasons, and hopefully we'll get into some of that as we go forward. And again, with cyber and the way that has evolved, you can see where the limitations on geostrategic reach have been lifted in many cases. So it's certainly an area of the topic of cybersecurity, as well as the ability to conduct operations in a joint and coalition environment that creates velocity as well as lethality, is something that we've really got to be focused on going forward. And I would argue the networks are the key, secure networks are the key to allowing all that to happen as we go forward. We got three great panel members here. They're all leads within their respective services for the main focus of the discussion. All the way down at the end is Vice Admiral Jeff Trussler. He's the Navy N2, N6. Which also means he also carries with him the title of Director of Naval Intelligence. I believe I got that correct. Yeah. So he's a guy that's sees the challenges from a lot of different directions out there. Got a tremendous operational background and perspective. He's served in a variety of leadership positions, to include command of the USS Maryland, SSBN 738, the Blue Team, first commander of Task Force 69 for 6th Fleet. He was the first commander of the Undersea Warfighting Development Center. He was Director of Future Plans on the APNAV staff, and he's also had a tour in the J3 on the Joint staff. I believe it was J3. Was it J3, Jeff? J5?
J3, yes, sir.
J3, okay. Next to him is Lieutenant General Matthew Skirt Glavy. He's got an incredible and impressive career, too, both operationally and in staff assignments that he's had. He was a Marine Air Wing current ops officer. He's been a squadron commander. He was an Air Wing commander as well. He's the commander, most recently, the commander of Marine Corps Forces Cyber, as well as the commander of Space Marine component of the Space Command and Space Operation. He's a presidential pilot, and he was a commander of HMX-1, which is the organization in the Marine Corps, the aviation unit that provides support, helicopter support to the president and other key leaders in the government. And he's also had a tour in information operations on the Joint Staff in the J3. And the next to me is Rear Admiral Dave Manlian, Coast Guard. He's Assistant Commandant for C4IT. He's got a career heavily focused on C4 and cyber-related issues, both at the staff and at the operational level. And prior to his current position, he served as the Director of Training and Exercise at the United States Cyber Command. So you can see he's got tremendous background, tremendous experience, and I think almost your entire career has been in the IT type of services. And he's also commander of the Coast Guard C4IT Service Center as well. So again, I'm going to start with some questions, but I want you to be asking the questions of these gentlemen up here and as we go forward, please. So the first question I'm going to throw out there, what has influenced your thinking most about JADC2 as opposed to your views of the concept and what it was when it was first introduced to you? So I'm going to let Admiral Trussler start with that.
Hey, Bob, thank you for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to participate here today. This is an outstanding forum, so thank you to AFC and USNI for putting this on, and thank you for San Diego for lifting the mask mandate and for this being such a great event we can all participate in. To answer your question, what's most influenced my thinking over the last year and a half since this concept came out? That's easy. The communist-led People's Republic of China. Okay, and if that is not the part of everything you're thinking about when you're here at this, this great venue talking about technology, you might have your focus wrong. Whether or not it's just pure economic competition, that ought to be enough, but it's not, as Bob Shea just mentioned. But if you're listening at lunch to what Admiral Paparo said, we sometimes forget when the JADC2 concept was sort of laid out. It built a bit after some efforts. The Air Force has started with the Advanced Battle Management System, and then a recognition at the Joint Staff level that we need, this needs to be a joint product and joint effort, and so labeled and scoped a bit. And we'll get some questions and be able to answer kind of how far we've come and how we're approaching this. And there's a lot of viewpoints, and I know there's a lot of questions about it. But in the end, we have to always make sure we remember that the purpose, and we don't state it very well, big we, it includes me sometimes, and we forget what the purpose of joint all-domain command and control is. Admiral Paparo said it perfectly at lunch today. Overwhelming, accurate, and lethal combat fires. In the end, that is what it's all about. It's going to be in a denied environment where the adversary is trying to jam you, trying to confuse you, trying to deceive you, trying to take away and disrupt your communications. That's where it must be prevail. He said today, I need an immediate targetable picture of the AOR. And what his boss, Admiral Aquilino, said, he goes, I want point click. That's a big, tall order. But that is a defining North Star of what JADC2 ought to be about and what we're working to deliver.
You know, along that lines, as I was doing a little homework for this, I went back and I did a little research here. Anybody know, I got $1 for anybody who can tell me who said this. We need a fused, real-time, true representation of the warrior's battle space and ability to order, respond, and coordinate horizontally and vertically to the degree necessary to prosecute the mission of that battle space. And that person went on to say, information system security, which supports the warfighter's requirements for real-time exchanges of information among many elements and across an array of functions, which facilitates joint interoperability, communications between ourselves and our allies, is essential to the success of future military operations. It's a two-part, if you get the dial, you got to answer two parts. Who said it and when? That sounds a lot like what we're trying to get to with JADC2, right? Well, that came out of Admiral Mackey back in 1992. And we're still chasing that elusive vision as we go forward. This is not easy stuff. It's very, very, very difficult. Is there anything, let me ask General Glavy, is there anything that has caught you by surprise as you've gotten engaged with this?
Sir, that's a softball. I think every day's a bit of a surprise. So for the Marine Corps, lucky or not, as the Commandant, 38th Commandant came in and stood up his force design, paralleled what we were doing with our joint warfighting concepts. And at the end of the day, JADC2's that. You know, JADC2 is not an answer. It's really a concept, probably going to be principle-based to determine how best we see and solve that very complicated problem. But like anything else, you know, change is very challenging. And as we've executed force design, we've made a significant focus on change from end strength that was really talked about yesterday with some of the Marine leaders up here to how we do business. What hasn't changed for the Marine Corps is obviously being the nation's Naval Expeditionary Force in readiness. Our ability to get on those amazing U.S. Navy amphibious ships, sail into godforsaken place and do the business of the nation. Things that we do today, things that we do around the clock, that won't change. But the idea of the stand-in force parallels directly with the joint warfighting concept. It parallels directly with the national defense strategy needs us to do. As China has the pacing threat, we have committed to be in the stand-in force. And the stand-in force, again, is briefly discussed, but it's every bit also conceptual as it is practical and organizational. Insofar as, having 20,000 Marines west of the international date line and proximity to that first island chain in the weapons engagement zone gives unique opportunity, both placement and access. That opportunity can be seen in our ability to act as this forward observer, this forward air controller, the ability to enable the joint force, the ability to provide those things that Admiral Pobaro talked about and others, right? Long-range lethal fires, and really all types of non-kinetic effects. Our ability to sense the environment, critical to any type of targeting cycle from anybody who's been in a room of the legal, lawful, ethical requirements of executing a targeting cycle in all domains. The ability to do the C2 of all that, and that's really an integration that fits squarely in our ethos, that of combined arms. What JADC2 is opening up our eyes to is the ability to coordinate fires in every domain. The ability to take that sensor data at the highest classification levels and push it to the lowest possible point to create an integrated fire solution from kinetic to non-kinetic, to air, to sea, to maritime, to subsurface. We got to look at it as that, and the Marine Corps goes out practically every month out to 29 Palms, California, and does combined arms, certainly raising our game to what we got to do going forward. So for the Marine Corps, I will tell you, it parallels our growth into the stand-in force, the Marine Littoral regiments that were talked about today, our ability to take full advantage of placement and access, to be that forward observer, and then ultimately to be the eyes and ears for the Joint Force Commander to effect those combined arms, which are all tied in to our ability to command and control. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Admiral Domanian, you've got your foot in two camps here. You got it on the Homeland side and the law enforcement side, and then there's the relationship you have in certain instances with DoD. How about you? Any surprises that you've seen, or that you didn't anticipate, perhaps?
Yes, sir. So thanks for the questions, and thanks for FCA and USNI for just sponsoring this great event. So I think the biggest surprise is, how long it takes and the level of complexity that we're talking about with things like joint all-domain command and control. There's nothing simple about it, right? And if we're trying to get after some of these complex problems, it's the time it takes to get unity of effort. It's the complexity associated with things like Minotaur family of systems. And so these two gentlemen to my left signed off on the implementation plan just recently, here just the last couple of weeks. And it's we've been talking about this for 10 years. We've been talking about it for a long time, and yet, hey, I'm extraordinarily confident in the American engineer and in our industrial base to meet that needs. As long as we don't over-constrain or over-prescribe what the requirements are. If we create things like statement of objectives and allow industry to get after it, I think we're able to do it. So within that environment, what surprised me is just how long it's taken for us to get after this, because it's complex, it's multifaceted, there's no single sets of words that can describe it. In fact, I think it's described in terms of nouns, adjectives, and verbs. So it's like, okay, back to English. And the only thing I wanted to make a note for, sir, instead of $1, I would definitely put out a Jackson or maybe even a Benjamin for that challenge next time, sir.
That's a safe bet, huh? So, we've talked how long it takes. We talked the complexity. I recall in a JROC meeting where I had a discussion with a gentleman, pretty heated discussion actually, where we were talking about developing the networks which JADC2 will depend on. He said, surely, this gentleman later became a combatant commander, and it wasn't Admiral Harris, but this gentleman said, surely this can't be more complex than building a nuclear aircraft carrier, this whole networking cyber piece that goes along with it. A few years later, after I'd retired and he was the combatant commander, I went and visited him, and he said, "Do you remember that discussion we had in the JROC?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." Let me tell you, he said, what you were trying to do is orders of magnitude more difficult than building a nuclear aircraft carrier. And I think if you look back at the time frame, going back to what Admiral Mackey was trying to do and Admiral Zabrowski after him, it really does highlight the complexity and the challenges that are out there. So having said that, is there anything that either one of the three of you, any one of the three of you would like to see change or would recommend change in the process to heighten the likelihood for a timely and successful delivery of the main effort?
I'll jump in. Do we need anything to change? I don't think so at the moment. I think a lot of questions might come with are we delivering fast enough? Those will come after the what exactly is being delivered, I'm sure. And there's this desire for speed, no matter what the answer is. I'll jump on that when given the opportunity here is. We must be absolutely deliberate, though. And what I worry about is somebody trying to define a solution that's going to work for all of us. And in this age, when you're talking about the multiple services, and it's not about individual services and not about service, but the services themselves provide the capabilities for the joint force. Okay, that's just the way it is right now. Big, complex, maybe more complex than we want it to be, but it is the way it is right now. And we have the ships, submarines, aircraft, weapons systems throughout the joint force that exist as they are right now. If we were to start from at this moment, so you got a clean slate and you've got 10 to 15 years, we might build a completely different military and we might build in some interoperability and some of the things we want out of JADC2 right off the bat. We don't have that luxury. We have from a Navy perspective, we have a 300-ship Navy, a couple of thousand aircraft, and then add the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, add the Joint Force with their strike weapons and aircraft. That exists. Our step one is to make sure the force we have now we can operate with. And so at the moment, the majority of the efforts actually taking place are about taking what we have and with some very minor tweaks and adjustments, with some deliberate experimentation and exercises that we're doing right now, whether it's in Project Overmatch, Project Convergence, whether what the Air Force Advanced Battle Management System team is doing, we're working and chipping away and solving those problems right now. And in fact, in the idea of Project Overmatch, going to field very shortly some increased capability for our deploying strike forces as is. So the biggest thing I would say is we must be deliberate, and there's not going to be a hands down or a committee or a solution or somebody at the joint staff or a program office that's going to deliver everything for us. There's a team of effort that's going to take place and that is already working right now.
How do you square the box with we need to be deliberate in the facts that we may not have a lot of time?
So, sir, I can.
Okay.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in here, JT. So, sir, there is momentum. So, if the 38th Commandant of the Marine Corps were here, he would agree with you. He'd agree with the frustration. He'd agree it's taken too long. He would agree with the sense of urgency that we've talked about for the last day and a half. There's no doubt about it. At the end of the day, right, the change aspect of what I touched on is in the midst of it. This is a new way of doing business. To JT's point, if you go out to Yuma Proving Grounds and watch what's going on with Project Convergence or any of the other sites, that it is significant. This collaboration idea, 35 years, I don't think I've ever seen it before, not seen it to the degree that it's happening. In my 35 years, the General Krulak back in the day, sir, created the warfighting lab, the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. It was this experimentation piece. I never quite knew if it had a deliberate role in the Marine Corps until recently, until the last 3 years, where they have become the main effort in this environment of changing quickly, an S&T world leveraged by industry, by so many people here to take ideas, not perfect ideas, ideas like minimal viable products, right? Minimal viable capabilities, unheard of concepts, for me certainly, but now become the norm. field user evaluations. We're taking stuff to the field, and General Smith talked about the 1MF commander is in the middle of all that. He's in the middle of this experimentation phase, working very closely with industry, and we are connecting dots I don't think we've ever connected. There's always issues with color of money. There's always the legal, lawful, ethical thing that maybe we can talk about, as well as we move out very quickly in the software-defined world, where, again, a repeat theme where hardware is secondary to this idea of creating and making your own luck fairly quickly in these collaborative environments where software evolves so quickly. So that would be my side of it, sir. Thank you.
Anything you want to add to that?
Sir, I'll just say there's no finish line. So
Okay.
this is an infinite game. There is no finish line.
Bob, and I might turn on its head. I hate this perception of don't have a lot of time being our burden. Let me tell you what, the machine is rolling, we're aligned. I would say it's the adversary that ought to be worried about time, because they have sparked our interest to their own detriment.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
As you look at the various service priorities and acquisition on the acquisition side, how will the JADC2 resources be prioritized? How do you think they're going to be prioritized against all the other service needs? And can you give us a little bit of insight on what that process might be and how it looks?
I'll always jump in. I hate awkward pauses. Of course, I think they will all roll to the Navy and into N6 so that we can fund our highest priority projects. But I know that's not the real world. But in the Navy, with respect to our contribution to this within Project Overmatch and in support of the CNO's navigation plan, which we are driving and marching towards, he's made this his highest priority. Okay, it's spelled out very clearly at the top of his list, and our budgets internal to the Navy are reflecting that. And again, I will say it's all about getting to a North Star of what I call those long-range fires that we're after. And as we're divvying up and wrestling with the budgets now, there was a fascinating lunchtime discussion yesterday with the budget gurus of the services that everybody got to sit in on. But that's we are competing for and competing well to produce the capabilities we need. And it doesn't happen necessarily overnight. But Doug Small there, he's sitting in the audience. He leads our Project Overmatch, a lively, healthy discussion and dialogue with his team and between the requirements and the resources we're providing. I think we're on track. And as we define the next way ahead and the capabilities that we're working towards, I think those resources are going to flow. Our processes are very deliberate towards the things that matter and the things that are going to move needles, and this is part of it.
So the only thing I would add is that whatever priority that a combatant commander or a service chief would provide, it's all tied into by this ability to command and control it. And every one of them certainly have been commanders in their day, and they would tell you the very most important thing in command is ability to command and control. So I think it's a natural proclivity that this is implied in everything we do, and whether it's long-range fires or whether it's ISR and the ability to sense the environment, or the ability to maneuver, or the ability to execute logistics, it's all tied together with this idea of command and control. And this is going to be an information fight, like we see it, before our very eyes. Current events, what's happening from an information aspect. And all this is the ability to control your data, use your data in the most impactful way, and to have all the resiliency from a network standpoint to take full advantage of it. So it's wrapped in all of it. And I feel good from a Marine Corps perspective. The Commandant understands it much better than I, how important it is, and it's given that priority. Thank you.
Anything you wanted to do?
Sir, I'll just say that the Coast Guard's already in the game. Admiral Schultz already has declared the technology revolution. Our first line of effort is to improve cutter connectivity. That means in the Arctic, in the Antarctic, that means in the Indo-PACOM and Oceania. So we're on that journey. And one thing, he's taught me a lot of things, but probably the biggest thing is that success begets success. So showing success, showing that incremental delivery of capability or that minimal viable product, which we have done over and over and over, that generates more and more confidence that more dollars should go in that direction. And so we're already underway. The first line of effort within the tech revolution is absolutely aligned with that. There's a lot more to work to do, of course, but this whole notion of, it's a big bang, there ain't no big bang. It's iterative, and we're going to deliver capability I would argue every month there's going to be something new. So, last month's Coast Guard is not this month's Coast Guard, and just let's go and keep up.
So, along that line, how do you deliver a synchronized capability when service efforts are funded and managed separately so that you get the power of the integration that's going on? How does that play out?
Yeah, I think that that's a reasonable question, and because services are, the word compete feels bad to say, but in reality, every service has concepts they want to bring to bear and bring to fruition, and capabilities we can bring to the joint force. But in the end, it's the services that build. I think the worst thing possible that could happen is that there be some separate pot of money that we're all competing for that is going to then solve a problem, or frankly, a joint program office of some kind that's going to solve the problem. How we're going to bring it together, we're already working that. And you heard me mention, Overmatch Project Convergence and the ABMS. The services are already working together and synchronizing. We probably don't publicize it and talk about it enough. Sometimes we just answer the questions asked by telling you what you ought to know. And we're doing that right now. The Air Force and the Navy, within our Project Overmatch and ABS, already working on several key efforts and have demonstrated several key things that can be brought to bear. The Navy and Marine Corps have put ships on the bottom of the Pacific in demonstrations and exercises with some of the capabilities we're talking to. We just don't come out and immediately slap a JADC2 sticker on the headline. We just don't operate like that when we're talking about how we're going to bring the capability. With the Army and Project Convergence, they lead an effort to which we bring in concepts that how might we tie in together. So all of these efforts are the synchronization that we're moving forward together, in my mind.
No, sir, you should be concerned. I know your experience tells you that, and our past performance probably warrants that. But I will tell you, as the chairman put together the joint warfighting concepts, in an ingenious way, they created a co-lead construct. So each warfighting concept has a J code and a service assigned to it. And now, as we go forward in things like testimony season, you go and testify before Congress in that type of accountable way between the chairman's staff and the service componency that is working that specific issue. So I think we need to be concerned. We have gotten off on tangents where we have non-compatible systems from integrated air defense to missile defense to countless others that you're so familiar with. We can't do that again. And so there's going to have to be accountability. There's going to have to be a process in place to do that. I think the chairman has done some of that. Executing in that manner is going to be so important. This collaborative phase that Admiral Trostler mentioned is critical. The ability to interact, that whole LSC event, the large-scale exercise event, with Naval Strike Missile and others, was Army as well, right? Army was part of that C2 construct, that fires, that targeting cycle construct. So there you are, ultimately, with 3 services now interacting. So we have no choice. I think we have to be held accountable, both from a Joint Chiefs of Staff and from a congressional aspect, and it's all in our good that we do that. Lastly, I'll just say, the construct going forward in this software-defined world, I think allows us to do this more. And Admiral Small probably knows better than me, but the ability to make your own luck when things are in a software-defined manner, I think allows a lot more opportunity for interoperability than oh shucks, we just built this black box and it is a proprietary standalone capability and I plug it in and I get to do what I need to do, but not necessarily do it with you. I think this environment, this technology construct is going to afford us more and more opportunity for interoperability. Over.
So what do you think is different now from past efforts where they've fallen short in trying to get to what Admiral Mackey listed here? There was an effort back in the early 2000s on the Joint Staff, very similar. Ball got across the goal line, then it got fumbled back. What's different that will make Congress, I guess, among others, comfortable that JADC2 is the right direction?
So I'll say something, turn it over to JT. So he started out by saying, I mean, there's a real clear present danger that we have. There's nothing more unifying than that, right? That at the end of the day, this is a threat of threats and one that will change the course of our lives. The Admiral, in his lunchtime comments, articulated it so well that if you walk away from that, not understanding the urgency of what we have at hand, then we've lost. And certainly, does the American people understand that or not? But on us as the warfighters to get this right, because it is an existential threat.
Okay. When you think about JADC2, that's pretty busy battle space. When you've got electrons flying everywhere, you got information going in all different directions through different media, satellites, terrestrial, submarine cables, lasers, all these things that might be out there. Information coming from, say, CONUS to the Western Indo-Pacific region. So what changes in any do you see might be required for to command and control the JADC2 structure that's out there? I mean, this is going to be, conceptually, things are going to be happening really fast. And so how do you command and control this? You may be in your submarine, and you may be getting a cue from a F-35 or something like that, and it's going through all these different network structures. What is that? What are the implications of that for command and control?
So, sir, I'll tell you, I'll jump on this. This is classic combined arms. So, as a MAGTF, Marine Air Ground Task Force, the ability to combine aviation fires with ground fires with non-kinetic fires to include the EW spectrum is a culture, right? It's a thought process on how you go about doing it. When Admiral Paparo talked about this point and click, right? Clicking an icon, maybe doing a weapons target pairing near real time, it busts the paradigm of an air component commander and a maritime component commander and practically all our componency, the ability to integrate fires in a combined arm fashion where aviation targets and certainly surface targets probably have to be done in some type of synergy to gain the outcome one desires. So there's a whole complexity of fires that I think it's after and the end state you desire. And the only way we're going to be able to do that, just even from an integration standpoint, is the ability of the magical artificial intelligence that provides us the insight on both integration and deconfliction. Obviously, there's blue targets out there, there's red targets out there. Big sky, little bullet theory doesn't work great in this multiple targeting environment, hundreds of targets. I mean, it is going to be a unique concept, and we can't do it without the technology required, certainly from an artificial intelligence algorithm construct on how best to execute those targets in a targeting cycle near real time.
I thought you might say artificial intelligence had a role here,
Yeah.
and I think that's absolutely something that's going to be critical going forward. It's difficult enough to manually control close air support and things like that when you got troops in contact. So trying to add all this other, bringing in intelligence and everything else. So it sounds like you're thinking artificial intelligence has got to be part of the solution to this.
Hey, what a great problem to have. What a great problem to have. That if we actually get to some capabilities that allow information and decisions that they're going to have to move faster than we have traditionally thought, that our current C2 structures don't work, that's going to be a great problem to solve, and it will be solvable. And so any panel I do, I usually pick some article, to be my notepad up here. So right now it's the JADC2 Background on Issues for Congress from the Congressional Research Service. So they spend a lot of time. What are issues Congress might have to wrestle with? And so one of those is C2. What does that mean? What will it mean? So there's a good discussion in there. You can read it yourself. But that would be tremendous if we had to alter how we think. And if you think, say if we're going to talk about China again, we're talking about an Indo-PACOM scenario, and cybercom, spacecom, and how we're going to manage fires, kinetic and non-kinetic, and kind of how we're thinking about it in our joint warfighting concept. The next piece in here is, well, how, if we get to decision space where information is at such a pace and volume, and that's the goal, that we're going to have to use decision aids, that we're going to, require some, machines to help us absorb and not just reorient data, but provide us options and decisions that we go press. And we're going to have to be very deliberate about, are we in the loop or on the loop with some of these? But there's some good discussion in there, and it's uncomfortable discussion, the role of artificial intelligence. What a great problem to have, though, that we're going to have to deal with that.
I hope we got somebody out in the audience working on this. Yeah. Okay. So let me just pull that thread just a little bit tighter. And, it's often been said the network that we have is not the network we need in a peer or near competition. So any thoughts on what we do to address this? I mean, you got latency issues, you got double hop satellite terminals, you're going from one service system to another. Any thoughts on, what changes need to be made? Is it a whole new network that has to be built, or what are we going to do? Because we got an IP network out there for the most part, and we're going to have a lot of issues with it when it comes to latency and going from one system to another. Any thoughts there?
So, sir, I think ultimately we haven't talked much about it, but this, the whole space domain is the area that we're going to have to take full advantage of. I don't think there's any doubt. And the prolific nature of what's going on from a commercial aspect with space, I think, gives us more and more opportunity than the deliberate approach that we have DoD and the IC have taken in space. I think their ability to innovate from an industry standard is going to be something that we're going to have to fully leverage in order to your point, minimize, reduce latency and other requirements. But as the Marine Corps is a standing force on the edge of the battle space, there's going to have to be a ubiquitous way to gain access to that data in that manner, and to be able to do it, using those capabilities. Certainly, what we need to do from a PACE plan and from a terrestrial standpoint, as any good commo would tell you, you better have primary, secondary, tertiary forms. Is going to be critical. Your comment, it's not the network that we have. I go back to certainly Secretary Rumsfeld. You go to war with the Army you have, not the Army that you want. And I would tell you, I think writ large, again, not satisfied, not at all. But damn it, we're Marines are out there right now with the Navy, doing naval integration, solving problems that they can control with the capabilities that they have now in the best innovative way possible, and putting minimal viable products in their hands, capabilities, even without having a full FOC, ATO'd capability is pretty inspiring. Again, not satisfied, not for any stretch, but no one's marking time with the network that we have. They're pushing it to its max capacity and ready for all the unique capabilities that we need to come online quickly.
JT, I got a question for you. We talked about the Defense Science Board study I did with Admiral Clemens many years ago, and one of the things he put forward is some type of a governance structure similar to the nuclear reactors program to get the service and everyone synchronized going forward. You want to kind of give what your personal observations might be with that kind of a governance structure over the top?
Who knew I'd ever end up as the N2, N6 getting a question about naval reactors and talking about tactical networks? That was meant for this moment. No, so I think what you're describing, it comes up a lot. It came up when the CNO provided that tasking for Project Overmatch to Admiral Small. And what he attacked him, he had in mind, you know, Hyman Rickover's efforts. He had in mind Red Rayburn's efforts, Wayne E. Meyer's efforts. I mean, some pretty large figures on how they were just given task and go figure it out. Okay, so I think, you know, I'm sort of all for that. I think the CNO has launched that. You know, in the age of the 21st century, we look back and what those figures had to deal with in the Cold War and the buildup. There was this urgency, and in the intervening years, we've taken whatever the federal acquisition regulations are and turned them into something that's thicker than it is wide sometimes, which makes it challenging. But that's why Doug was given the direct program authorities, the DERPM authorities. You know, he is to go. Now he's dealing with a different environment, quite frankly. But when you go and want to talk across all the services, the natural answer somebody might come up with is, well, then therefore we should have a joint program. And I'll be the biggest opponent against that. That we then now as services and feel we would. I don't know that would be the solution. I think what you're seeing, you know, right now, and I think this is where the Joint Staff has done a really good job under Lieutenant General Kroll in setting the structure, the strategy, the cross-functional team, that accountability lead, and this is one of the accountability leads in those items that General Glavy talked about, of several concepts, not just the JADC2 coordination, but joint fires and some other things, that they're kind of placing some boundaries and then pushing out for us to go bring back some of the solutions. It's not going to be a democratic vote on, but they have recognized the work that each of the services are doing and specifically are pointing at those interoperable efforts that we're doing together. And okay, this is about right. And in fact, General Kroll's kind of keeping everybody at bay to let us experiment with each other and keep developing. The most important thing we do is not lock in solutions that lock other solutions out, and we're doing a good job of that.
Okay, thank you. This morning, one of the things that came up in the discussion was this whole nation approach to national security. I'm just switching gears a little bit here to kind of move in a little bit of the cyber discussion of what's going on. So I'm going to put this one to Admiral Dermanlian. How do we get a tighter coupling on cybersecurity between industry, government, and academia? And then I'll flip it over to JT and General Glavy. You know, how do we do this with our coalition partners? You've got to work on the Homeland Security side as well as the DOD and then other agencies, even down to the state and local level. So, you know, how do we get a tighter coupling, better sharing of information, better alertness? You know, one of the things that I continually hear is, well, the intelligence sometimes will come down from on high, but we already know 98% of what's coming down. It's coming down late. And you look at the supply chain. If you look at all those threats that are out there now, any thoughts on how we develop a tighter coupling across government, industry, and academia, for that matter?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. So, not joking. Probably an hour and a half before I came in here, I see this cyber newsletter, or not newsletter, but bulletin come out. It was a joint NSA, FBI, CISA awareness that the Russians are attacking the industrial base. And actually, in open source, talking about this in terms of, hey, this is what. So sharing that sort of information, that no kidding, they're in your knickers, and this is what they're doing, and you know, we're all now sharing information. We've got what, 17 sectors that we share information through ISACs. You know, we just need to continue to do that at the Coast Guard level because we know that 90% of our goods come in through the maritime channels. We bring in our port partners through the Area Maritime Security Committee. And, you know, these are non-government agencies, and we start talking about cyber stuff. And, you know, those are the same folks that are operating those cranes. They're taking stuff off the COSCO vessels, the MSC vessels, And hey, you don't want to be vulnerable at that moment because you can really tie up the port of LA Long Beach. Whew, that hurts the nation in its pocketbook. So I think through the ISACs, through the Area Maritime Security Committee, and oh, by the way, our whole of government is working, FBI, NSA, CISA, and they're publishing that as open source information about one of the nations that are not acting in accordance with the international rules.
I'd like, if you come up to the microphone here, please. You don't want to just hear my question. I know you have pressing questions out there, so let's step up there and start getting these questions rolling, if you would, please. Okay. One of the other things I took away from the meeting, from the discussion this morning, was that we need to do a better job to crisply articulate the threat and the risk. And it was kind of in a national security sense there, but I would argue that same articulation of the message needs to be re-emphasized or more strongly emphasized or educated or taught on the cybersecurity side as well. In many cases, I think we've all seen the alerts and read in the newspaper what's happening in a particular industry or a particular company. In a lot of ways, my concern is that we've become numb to what is going on out there. And if you think about the impact to the economy alone, if you look at the numbers in terms of espionage, it is frightful. So what can we be doing to more, as a government, to more crisply deliver, and that took that term away from this morning's discussion, what the real challenges are and the associated risk? Any thoughts on that?
So, sir, I mean, if we start from an industry standard, well, actually from a DoD acquisition standard, our ability to get KPPs, key performance parameters, in line with your thought process, is a start to that. So, in the Department of the Navy, Don CIO is leading this readiness issue, and really, cybersecurity readiness. What does that mean? What does that mean? And for the Marine Corps, it's as you know, readiness is a culture, right? It's how you conduct yourself. It's how any unit prepares daily and what it is they need to do. And we just haven't probably provided that type of emphasis at the unit level, whatever that may be, with respect to cybersecurity. So in many respects, it's this idea of having a culture. Now, with the Marine Corps moved out quickly on this, created a unity of command. At the end of the day, the commander of Marine Corps Forces Cyberspace Command, command and controls the entire network, secure, operate, and defend the mission across the Marine Corps, all the way down to the tactical edge. So accountability, responsibility matters with that type of responsibility. So again, I would go back to this idea of how do we get industry's partnership on that. Probably needs to be drawn out in some type of acquisition profile, and then secondly, from a organizational construct, how do you generate readiness as a culture?
Okay. Question.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Scott Cooper. I'm a retired Marine and now at Peraton. I'd like to ask you a little bit about how you talk about the use case of JADC2. And what I'll give you as an example is, everyone thinks, hey, I've got a command and control network here in my iPhone. But that is resilient because the FCC demands it, and I don't have any latency because I have a constellation of cell phone towers that guarantee that. But that officer of the deck in the South China Sea, she has neither that is guaranteed to her. And so I'm wondering how you're talking about the use case. Yes, it's fires, but it's also how do we ensure that we're getting the information to the point of the spear?
You're really talking about getting information in a contested environment.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't find myself talking about use cases. Everybody that right now is an officer of the deck in the South China Sea, I guarantee you, they are on heightened alert, understand the situation they're in, and they're always ready. By their theme out there, ready, may have to fight tonight. And but I think, yeah, we haven't said it out loud enough. We're talking about the interoperability of everything we want. We want to be able to take it. We have just a tremendous array of sensors out there, on board the platforms we have. whether from space, whether they're launched in the air from airport or the deck of a carrier, unattended sensors, unmanned systems out there. So it's going to be proliferated in a number of ways for us to use. And the concept of, well, then how do we get that to a point where that can be fused into decisions and actions and maybe a best shooter? So that theme has come out, that's defined pretty well, but what about that denied environment where the adversary is not just happy to watch us, well, that adversary is looking up and trying to jam all of these things while we're trying to communicate and use them. But they know where they are. We're trying to jam them. They're trying to. It is the tight pinnacle that we talk about at the operating at the pointy end of getting those through. So there's a lot of capabilities inherent into the generic discussion we have that are, what kinds of things in the EW spectrum are still going to be able to get through. And I think that we don't talk enough, and when I guess if there was a vignette and what we talk about behind the closed doors is the spectrum and how we are going to manage that, because that is where real conflict actually is. We're not going to be able to use any of those decision tools and sensor data if it can't get through the spectrum, which is going to be an unusual battle space, I think.
Thank you.
Thanks again, gentlemen, for your time today. My name's Bren Sadler from the Heritage Foundation. I'd like to hear very succinctly from each of you what's your next milestone event, and then for the panel writ large, when, or if you've already done it, what you've learned from an at-scale exercise or operational test, when that's planned, if you haven't.
I'll take the first crack. So just kind of the theme that I've mentioned, I mean, we are, we could say it's going to be PC 22, right? Next fall, Army's going to get everybody together. We're going to do the do. It's going to be great. But I will tell you that's not the case. We will be there and we will do the do. But we're doing it. Every exercise out of 29 Palms, California, has built into it these constructs on how we're going to push data across the battle space to the person who needs it and the point and place they're choosing. How do we use the space domain in a similar fashion? How do we integrate weapon systems that we have today? Long-range fires. So we're not waiting. And I think the collaboration across the sea services has been significant. And I will tell you, every training event, every MU goes out and they're in their certification exercises doing these things. So again, the full, minimal viable product. I mean, everything's going to be relative to some type of end state, which needs to be significant, especially on a bad day. But don't think that this is not episodic. This is a continuous state. It is a different environment than certainly the one I grew up in. Straight up, that you're bringing experimental stuff into an exercise that I'm being graded on for me to utilize to take advantage of what's next based on that. So it is not a stagnant thing, it's an enduring thing, and we push capabilities out all the time that our Marines are using and providing feedback near real time on whether it's going to work or not.
Yes, sir.
Hey, gentlemen, Don Klein, former P3 guy in ship's commo, so I appreciate the secondary, tertiary comment. Quick question for you. We've talked a lot about transmitting and receiving information. You don't hear a whole lot about intelligent MCON and minimizing signatures, particularly for Marines that are distributed across the Pacific. So could you speak a little bit? I mean, again, I think this is something where AI can definitely come in to help us make more informed decisions about what to turn off and when. And there's an adjunct to that with deception efforts as well. So if you could comment on that kind of whole package about, again, being smart about when we talk and when we don't. Over.
I have the first part, and then I'll turn it over. So my first deployment was a Landing Force 6 fleet during the Cold War, and one of the requirements before the Marine Expeditionary Unit could get underway is you had to do a complete well deck, flight deck operations NORDO, right? No radio, the chalkboards, everything. And so it was a significant event. You train to it. You you performed to that standard in order to get certification and had to do it both from a well deck and from a flight deck standpoint. I did that, exactly that time in my career, never to do it again going forward. But I will tell you, if you go out to that same MWX that I mentioned out in 29 Palms, California, you will see an incredible sensitivity to the electromagnetic spectrum. 37th Commandant always stated, General Neller, if you emit, you are dead. And Marines have taken that on board. There's a dichotomy, obviously, to execute a targeting cycle, the ability to gain the right data at the right time and place. But there is an incredible sensitivity to the battle space that they're going to operate in going forward. And it's got to be a culture and a training environment that gets you there. Over.
So when we have 100 or more ships at sea, and submarines, and aircraft launched from their decks. In the perfect world, we'd be absolutely silent, and therefore in a perfect MCON and not targeted. In our concept for distributed maritime operations, it's not going to be the case. There's going to have to be some exchange of data. That's why we now have information warfare commanders as part of the strike groups and of the concepts that we're implementing throughout in the training pipelines, so that commanders and then in the future at Maritime Operations Center, so that we can empower commanders to have better understanding of what their risks really are. And that we're going to be providing them tools and TTPs to, it's not going to be just a black or white, 1 or a 0. Yes, transmit, bam, you're dead, or no transmit, but we lose the battle because critical information didn't go. So that's why we're going to provide some tools to take advantage of the environment you're in. That spectrum is not perfect. It is subject to the environment. It is subject to the things we do to that environment. It's subject to day and night sometimes, and what the actual conditions in the space realm are in that environment. So that is a focus of our effort, is to provide those tools so we can better understand the environment, change it to our advantage so that we can transmit and communicate if we need to. All part of the package, and that's about all you're going to hear from it at this forum.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Ramberto Torwea. I'm with OpNav N9. My question is about how do you see JADC2 being used in the DDIL environment? Specifically, the use case I'm thinking about is first few days of the war, first few days you know that your high bandwidth capabilities are going to be impacted. How do you continue to have that exquisite information exchange when bandwidth is limited? And how does HF fit into this? How does EHF fit into this? How do we go back down to, God forbid, just message traffic only or just chat only when we're trying to command and control and still have access to data from sources but have a hard time getting the data to the shooters?
Hey, that's part of the problem we're trying to solve. Does Admiral Khan know you're here, actually? You work for, you say OpNav N9?
Yes, sir. He doesn't know I'm here. I actually work for Mr. House.
Oh, okay. All right. Good friend of mine, a submarine buddy of mine. No, hey, that is not the. How do you then do that if that is part of the problem statement? Okay, so I think I kind of said that previously, that we're going to all this to connect that or whatever. In that environment. And I should have said in that environment almost every time. We expect that to be the challenging environment, but I also expect that we're going to manage and control that environment a bit too. We're not going to be passive victims of what's going on. We're going to create a bit of our own opportunities. And that's why we're going to just have to make sure there's some ConOps and TTPs we're going to have to change to take advantage of situations, and some decision aids we're going to have to, hey, when you can now download dump, and then those tools and repositories on board that when you've synced, you have the latest from all, and it may not be a perfect picture, but and there may be just a lot of passive receive information that we have to smartly push. That's part of the decision process and the tools we're going to put into place too, because we can flood the airwaves with a bunch of nonsense. But that's part of when it, what a great problem to have is we've got too much information to pass than the process for what is going to be pushed. And I think commanders will tell you have a pretty good idea of what that information is that we're going to need to push. Won't talk about it here, but I think it's going to be pretty obvious to the commanders of what their priorities are, of what's just going to be constantly pushed depending on the orders they have recently given.
I'll just add, we reestablished U.S. Space Command. We established the Space Forces to get after this exact scenario. So at the end of the day, General Raymond will tell you we're going to have space superiority. I mean, in his every cell in his body, that's why he exists, to create that opportunity to have that superiority or period thereof. May not be an enduring thing, but the ability to gain the edge and gain a superiority edge in order to gain the momentum is why they exist. And so they have that mission. So though we got to have, and we got to train to the most challenging standard, to your point, and why PACE plans are so important, we also should not sub-optimize our ability to dominate the force as quickly and as deliberately as possible on our timeline. So again, this ain't one arm tied behind our back. We are doing something in the space domain to gain the critical edge in order so we don't have to live in that sub-optimized environment, but know full well we have to train to it over.
I want to jump in here just a minute. One of the things that talking about operating in contested environment and things like that, we throw frequency, the use of frequency and spectrum around like it's automatic, it's going to be available. Each one of those frequency bands has specific physics attached to it, and it's used for a particular reason. Some may be to pass more information than others. The RF will travel farther. Some will penetrate. Are we doing all the things we need to do to be able to manage the spectrum when we get into this environment?
So I'm no expert, but I certainly would tell you that there's concerns, but it's almost like the fishes and the loaves. What we have been able to do from multiplexing and other God-forsaken techniques that industry has provided, we keep evolving on this scenario. When you think you're almost done, when we think the link picture's full and there can't be another link 16, well, guess what? We've created opportunities based on digital signatures to expand the link picture by X amount. So I certainly agree with you, sir. But I will tell you, we should again not sub-optimize, because I think industry keeps on providing opportunities for us to take full advantage of the frequency band we get. But it is a finite amount.
The reason I throw that out there, I see the term 5G thrown around pretty loosely, and I certainly see where the value is. But there's physical limitations. You need a well-defined, well-developed network to be able to do that. And I think sometimes when we start talking about these concepts, we forget the physics that are involved sometimes.
No, absolutely. That's why I talk about, it is the EW spectrum that's going to win the fight if we have to go kinetic. It just will be. Or maybe what prevents us from even getting in that. And but you bring up an interesting thread that we've been dealing a lot with lately. We're out at sea conducting distributed maritime operations, and if we're in a wartime or combat scenario, the only rules that are going to be followed are the ones we set and dictate. However, to be able to effectively use that, we've got to be able to train to it. Okay, so the incredible capability we have to be able to train when we go to sea. When we put those strike groups, submarine ships at sea, aircraft at sea, we have to be able to train at our training ranges. And so we've got some pretty incredible capability. And that can be very confusing in the national airspace to commercial air flights that are just, flying around. So we've dealt with that. There's been some articles in the news. I expect there's a bit of undercurrent of that in the discussion. And I mentioned this yesterday at the IW Pavilion during some of my remarks, because there have been a couple of articles, fairly negative, implying a negative article that the FAA has concerns about the military limiting our use of Link 16. You hear some things about radar altimeters and the use, and the selling off of DoD spectrum so that 5G, so that the industry can use 5G to move us ahead. And again, I look back and say, what a great problem to have, okay? Nobody has ever accused the DoD of moving too fast in an area. And so now we are in some areas where we want to operate some different types of radios and upgrade our software quickly, that the FAA was maybe struggling to keep up a little bit. Wow, okay, FITREP bullet. We're the defined moving fast right there. Somebody else is having trouble keeping up. So that has come up recently, but that's a good problem to have. And that has drawn the DoD and the FAA a little closer together, and hey, we're going to be moving fast, and their job is to protect flight safety. So that has produced a great relationship, led by Admiral Oshbach's team at I-4 to pull together our operating air forces and the ones that we represent for a couple of systems. That we're going to have to communicate and collaborate a little more deliberately because of that, because we want to train hard, we want to train like we fight, and we can't conflict the airspace. And then the fact that that our industry is wanting, demanding, begging, buying more spectrum because they want to offer us more capability in our daily lives. Again, another great problem to have. So we will solve this. The smart people who are here in industry and pay for and solve this, that is good, healthy friction that we're going to wrestle with. And it's not Malthusian in its distribution. It looks like it, but we'll solve it.
I'll tell you what, it's not a good problem to have. It has cruiser coming in with a Spy 1 Delta Raider into Pearl Harbor and all the garage doors going up and down in Makalapa. Next question, please.
Hi, Mallory Shelbourne with USNI News. My question's for Admiral Tressler. You mentioned some fielding coming up this year with Project Overmatch. I'm wondering if you can talk more about what that's going to be like and what you're hoping to learn from that fielding.
In questions like that, I usually provide very unsatisfying answers on specifics. Hey, I think you heard the CNO recently talk about strike groups deploying, and as soon as sometime next year, with some of the efforts and work that Admiral Small's team and Project Overmatch are producing. And it's really because Admiral Small was unleashed. He was not handed that letter with a big sack of money to go get new capabilities. He was handed a letter, go figure it out, make us better. As we're searching for the next, bit of what I would call a North Star, and for everything we build now and in the future, what it should conform to with a little more futuristic look at our capability. He's dealing with the 300 ship submarines we have right now and the aircraft that operate and support with them and the weapons they fire. So he has done an incredible job of taking some of these isolated systems that were platform purpose-built with weapon system sensors and things we had previously maybe used in, if you've ever heard of our Naval Integrated Fires Counter-Air NIFCA concepts, that was maybe a step 2, level. And now he's advanced those to a large step above, taking what we have, given some authority to impact some programs and program offices that we're going to be deploying on ships and strike groups next year. I'm not going to give you any specifics of that, but he's already, somebody asked another question about timelines and next milestones. He's already crossed multiple internal milestones and spirals on his way to his first big deliverable next year that he's largely on track for. And that's actual operating capability and forces, while we are also continuing with the various service programs working together to continue and test. So somewhere in there, I didn't answer your question one bit specifically, but I'll tell you, we're on track with what the CNO directed.
Okay, we're going to take these last two questions. Let's try to get them quick. And then I'm going to ask the panel to tell industry 2 things that you would like them to focus on to support your efforts.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Lieutenant Commander Mike Kamen from OpNav. I had more of a cyber network defense type of question. Previous assignment, I worked in defensive cyber ops at Fleet Cyber, and we consistently saw vulnerabilities with the defense industrial base and with contractors that fall outside of the service's control to really do anything about when they had problems. So my question is, what can the services do to shore up some of those vulnerabilities that we see among the defense industrial base, some of those cyber vulnerabilities when they get schwacked? What can we do about it?
Yeah, so I'll jump on the first part. Hey, if it's our data, we have a absolute requirement for our cybersecurity service provider to defend that data. So that's first and foremost. And however that's written into the contract or whatever, so each of the cyber components has a role. No kidding, not joking. Hey, it can be in your system, but if it's the United States Coast Guard data, Admiral Ryan has a big say in that. So we've got to exercise those muscle movements a little bit. We've got to be able to have those scenarios play out. And then we got to have a responsive DIB partner that comes back to us to say, this is what's going on, this is what's happened. And then we have to share information with them to help them close it, help them understand what they're actually confronting if they don't already. And by the way, most of them already have some pretty good insight into who's doing what and what ATP is doing what to them. So they already know quite a bit, but we got to exercise those cybersecurity service provider muscle movements, and no kidding, hold that DIB accountable, and it should be painful.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
Well, I really appreciate that last question. My name's Chip Daniels. I'm with SolarWinds. So a little over a year ago, SolarWinds was rudely introduced to exactly that problem. My question for General Glavy, your experience at Marforce Cyber, what are your thoughts on how public-private partnerships should evolve across our nation as we try to enhance cybersecurity and response? Thank you.
No, thanks. So this is always hard, right? This ability to get, private U.S. citizens that have the right to that privacy to accept some type of standard, and usually that standard requires some type of validation. I will tell you that we have looked hard, at the highest level of DoD on how do we make sure our partnerships with DIB come with a few more strings attached, and what are those strings? The ability to scan, and even if it's a third party, to scan the networks of those industry partners to ensure they maintain some level of compliance. Because in your case, it was a pretty extravagant scenario you all went through when they went after, your supply chain and the ability for you to deliver your product that you create. And most of the time, though, we leave the keys in the car. Sometimes we leave them in the ignition, and most of the time the window's down and the door's open. We do a lot of not ideal things. So I think there is a bar, a threshold. It does not get after where we got to go with security, but there are some basic foundational aspects of what the Admiral talked about, of expectation levels, to include a ability to understand the vulnerabilities of those networks that provide key capabilities. And even if it's third-party vendors, there's some there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go now real quickly here. Just if you would please crisply just say, two things where you think industry could help you solve some of the problems you've got. Two areas. Go ahead, Admiral Dramani.
So the first thing is, so I'm going to do my best not to oversubscribe a requirement and give you maneuver room to offer solutions. So I would ask that the solutions that you offer, don't paint me into a corner. Don't paint me into a proprietary corner, or say it's open when it's really not. That's not helpful. And I will fight like hell to get out of that arrangement if I find myself if I'm in that arrangement. So I'm asking you to offer me the best and brightest solutions if I'm able to not oversubscribe, which, by the way, is really hard. Because folks think they have the best, widget. This is how you got to do it. No. We're not going to tell industry how to do it. I need you to do it. Exercise the brain power that you have, and then don't paint me in a corner. When I ask you for open system, I mean open systems, so I don't get stuck with a relationship that I have to have in perpetuity. Thank you.
One more.
I'm gonna pass.
Okay.
So I will say, and it's been a repeat theme, but this idea of software over hardware, not locking us into a hardware solution, but being able to provide the software capabilities that, software-defined, near real-time updates as threats changes, as ConOps change, as the adversary change, be able to change with them and do that and make sure that damn software comes with the ability to survive an adversary's onslaught in the domain per the questions that were just answered here towards the end. Thank you, sir.
JT?
Sure. I think I've given in this job the same answer for about a year and a half, but I'm gonna caveat it heavily this time because what I usually end up getting presented to me is just largely unsatisfying. Don't take offense to that for those of you who have presented to me. The biggest thing you can do for us is keep competing. For the industrial base, keep competing, keep poking, keep challenging us. Because I think the biggest problem we have is we're a requirements-driven organization, and we need to better articulate the problems we are trying to solve to you by huddling up behind closed doors and then coming out with a list of requirements to which you almost always give us absolutely what we asked for, vice what we really need. So we need to do a better job in articulating. I will say that up front before I say I'm interested in cybersecurity and AI/ML. And then usually, I know you're already whipping out your business cards to come to get on my schedule and tell me what you got. And usually, I'm always disappointed in the AI/ML discussions because I think everybody uses that as a buzzword to get in, and I've been surprised at the lack of ability to describe how that might be used in some of the problem sets where. And I've seen all the commercial intel gathering, what it can do to harness open source information. I've seen all of those, I think. I don't think there's one I haven't seen. But I'm talking about how it's going to be used in decision aids, taking disparate information that could support what we're trying to do in JADC2 and Project Overmatch, to which the data sets may not actually be large, okay? And that seems to go against what AI/ML is supposed to work against. And then cybersecurity. Usually I hear about, there's a discussion about kind of one software solution to do X, and it's usually related to, sort of a conventional, network. I'm concerned about the unusual systems, the SCADA that you talk about for critical infrastructure that operates our, supports our bases, supports our ships, aircraft, submarines, stores our weapons, and then those things operating at sea, how we can identify the complex network and connections that we have aboard those ships, submarines, and aircrafts, and understand and protect those better. That's what I'm thinking about when I think cybersecurity.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for your insights and your candor with what you've done, and I want to thank our sponsors, and thank you all for your good questions out here. Thank you very much. Mike?
I again want to thank you as well. I'd like to pick up on a couple things. We talked a bit today about securing the network. Are we making progress? Are we making progress in JADC2? Just a few bullets. Contested environment, spectrum, training, distributed comms, event-driven, C2 across boundaries, prioritize requirements, agility, and fight tonight. The bottom line is we got to fight tonight. Gentlemen, on behalf of the U.S. Naval Institute and AFCEA, we're going to provide you with the latest book, The Sailor's Bookshelf. You've heard this before by Admiral Stavridis. Thank you much, General Shea.
Thanks, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending today. Don't forget to sign out if you want the credit for the session this week or today. Take a moment to share your thoughts by providing feedback using the West app. Also, you can join us in the keynote space a little bit later this afternoon for a women's reception at 4 o'clock. And happy hour on the floor is taking place at this very moment. We'd love to have you participate, and it's sponsored by Akamai, Aqua Security, Nokia, Tyco Athlete, and Vion. And drink tickets are being provided by Red River Technologies. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Ladies and gentlemen, the CE scanners are scheduled to be shut down very soon. So if you do want to scan your badge for CE credit, please go ahead and do so right now. Thank you.